Hello, Alex Brundle here, introducing you to the first race of this year's Le Mans 24-hour Classic, which we took on in our GT40. And rather than just play the onboard, I'm going to give you a bit of an extra technical talk through. So let's go. So after that first braking zone, a couple of things. Those who are watching the pedal cam on the bottom left of the screen might have noticed a great big lift coast on the way into the first chicane. That's because GT40s are dominated by their brake temperature around the lap. The second point, as demonstrated with that Lola coming past us, is we're pretty outgunned in this race. Most of the stuff out there has either a little bit more grip, less weight or more power. And that's because we're in a slightly later grid than the age of our car. We're in a 64, 65 spec GT40, and this race runs from 66 through to 1971. So we're a little bit outgunned through the whole distance here. What you just saw was the first inkling of that brake temperature that I was talking about. So I left the downshifts really late there, and that's because we were right on the limit of rear locking when I broke for Mulsanne corner, which is the final big stop of the lap. Brakes effectively overheat front first, and what you get is all rear braking. So I delayed the downshifts to make sure we didn't lock the rears up. So here you're going to learn a bit of a Le Mans trick, because in a couple of moments time I'm going to run the windscreen wipers once, and the reason I'm going to do that is you can see I've got some droplets of fluid on my screen. The reason I run the wipers once is to try and understand if the fluid is coming out of my car or if it's coming out of someone else's car. If it's coming out of someone else's car, the droplets of course don't return, you're unlikely to be in that position again. If it's coming out of my car, the droplets come back. So that's just a sense on if the radiators, which are in the front of my car, are leaking, or I've just been behind something that's dropping a little bit of coolant. So information for me there with a bit of a trick to understanding where the fluid is coming from at Le Mans. car that just passed me gives you an indication of the level of grid that I'm in. I'm just trying to get smart at this point and not fight too hard, find myself a nice little gap. Looks like I'm a similar pace to the Chevron behind me, but he is likely to pass me, I think, when he gets going as well. I'm just trying to run nicely here. It's the early stages of Le Mans Classic and there's still quite a long way to go. Great big lift coast again to look after the brakes and take the energy out of the car. For those sort of newer to your racing journey or haven't seen an H-pattern car race too much before, what I'm doing in the braking zones is the heel and toe downshift technique. So I'm blipping the throttle to keep the engine speed in line with the road speed as I go down through the gearbox. So each blip of the throttle makes the engine speed as I reconnect the clutch closer to the wheel speed, which stops big interruptions in the wheel speed as I go down the gearbox, and again prevents the rear tires from locking. Super important when you have really high rear brake temperature and really high brake temperature in general like this, or a bit of rear locking, because it can prevent you locking on the final downshift, which is always your biggest issue. As you can see, I've still not quite got my head around Mulsanne corner, where the brake temperature is at its greatest, because we've stopped the car aggressively a couple of times for the chicanes, and so the brake balance is changing in there a lot, and I'm still trying to get my head around it. Good practice as well is also to wait quite a long time after you start braking in order to take the first downshift. That's because at Le Mans you're running these really long ratios, and it's easy to over rev and damage the engine if you go for the downshift, particularly the first downshift, too quickly, as we're running a really long fifth gear here. So as you can see, that was kind of a matter of time. The little Chevron B19 behind me not only has about 200 kilos less than me, he also has bigger tyres and a softer compound of tyre to go with it. So he just has plain more grip than me. Way less power, actually, around 100 horsepower less, but he's lower to the floor and a bit better through the air. So as you can see, he's just playing quicker than me at this stage. It's another one I'm going to have to swallow as I come across the line for the third lap of the race. So from the way the car is behaving now, you should be able to see that I'm turning out of the corners more, and that's the main issue we have with this car at the moment. Just oversteer that progressively gets worse through the runs. It's because the engine is quite heavy and towards the rear of the car, which overloads the tyre, which is a bit too small anyway, and also the rear brakes overheat, so the tyre is getting superheated from the surface and from the inside, which means that the tyre stops performing after a little while, and you get a lot of rear locking and a lot of sliding from the rear end, and have to be really careful in the braking zones. yellow flag and safety car deployed means I have to cruise a little bit through the mid-corner of chicane 2 because you have marshals out there dealing with the car off the road. Main and first disaster of this race is about to strike, and you can see we get pretty annoyed about it because there are 3 safety cars at Le Mans, that being the second one, which comes out in the second chicane, but the leaders ahead of me have managed to pass it and will be a third of the track now ahead of me as they go round and pick up the one which comes onto the track at Arnage. So that's already, in that exact moment, pretty much a minute lost of race time. What happens then is I'm right on the absolute limit of the pit window. So I'm not sure whether I can pit or not. Pit window is from 15 minutes to 45 minutes through this race, and I'm not sure in the car if 15 minutes of the race have gone. Next race, we put a stopwatch on the dashboard. That is exactly what I should have for this race, but I don't. You can see me looking around, trying to figure out whether we are past 15 minutes of race time or not. And you can see the cars behind me as well, helpfully leaving me all on my own to make this decision. Nobody's absolutely sure. I'm not sure if I can pit or not, so I choose to go past the pit lane rather than breaking the regulations and getting a penalty for it, and that proves to be the wrong decision. So not only have we been cut by the safety car, we've also now made the wrong decision about whether to pit under the safety car or not. Next time around, safety car lights are going to go out, compounding the disadvantage. I am praying and hoping we're going to get to go round again and I'm going to get to pit under the safety car when I'm sure that the pit window is open, but alas, not to be. I'm now going to be forced to make my pit stop under green when the safety car comes in, when others have made their pit stop under the safety car, which is another 2-minute loss. Total disaster in this race. Another fun little aside, a curveball for this one, is that the safety car 1 line that I've just been talking about is going to get delayed at the safety car restart. So I'm more cautious. You're not actually supposed to pass the safety car until it's cleared the barrier. The Ferrari behind me goes for it. And then the safety car 1 line is going to get delayed and held up into Mulsanne corner. And that's what you're going to see now. This is really scary. Still to this moment have no idea what they were all waiting for, but yes, that was a Porsche 917 doing 30 miles an hour when we turned up at 160 miles an hour in the middle of the Mulsanne Straight. So that was sketchy, cleared a lot of cars in it though, and at this point I'm totally lost as to where I actually am in this race, but I know I need to make a pit stop before the pit stop window closes, and I'm actually getting pretty close now, because the pit stop is only open for 15 minutes, and that's a really slow lap. I get pretty annoyed with this chevron, who launches me up the inside, and then does so deeply that he runs out of gears on the exit. So yeah, I gesticulate a little bit. You have to excuse me in the moment. pit stop then under green flag conditions while the rest of the field are going at racing speed, which is the big disaster in this one. That being said, all goes smoothly, and I'm reassured to see the number of cars that have effectively made the same mistake as me. So I'm going to troll down the pit lane and not break any rules here. It's really hard to find your pit crew in the pit lane, but we've agreed that we're going to be just by this timing tower on the left hand side. So we make sure that we're in the right place, and I pick a reference point on the left hand side, as you always do at Le Mans, to make sure that the pit process goes well. I'm annoyed by the Ferrari not then keeping up with the pit lane speed, and I rather satisfyingly nail him on the exit. The brakes and tyres cool down, which means the car behaves again better for about a lap or so. The Ferrari just has much more quicker power, so that's always going to pass us. Unfortunately, that was relatively short-lived. But I'm now trying to make progress while the car still feels good, and also great big lift and coast to try and keep the brakes and tyres under control for as long as I possibly can. I am around P35 at this point. That's how badly that pit stop process has gone, so I'm trying to make the best possible progress. Sense of the actual limit of a classic car at Le Mans, I'm about to go around the outside of this chevron in one of the kinks to Indy, and I actually have to lift so I don't crash, which shows you just the limitation of how close you are to the limit of grip all the way around. indication that you can never judge a book by its cover. I really thought I was going to pass him down into this chicane. He's actually rapid in a straight line, and really not bad in the chicane either, so I have to wait all the way to the start-finish line to eventually get him, which is where cars start to catch you out if you start to prejudge them while you're pounding around, and that's how it's really easy to have accidents in traffic at Le Mans. Another fun bit of traffic behaviour demonstrated by this Chevron, who was cruising along minding his own business, and then so often amateur drivers at a race like this will see a pro driver coming up behind them and basically then go at a speed that they're not comfortable going at for the whole race, but they are comfortable going out for a couple of corners. So they'll then hit the blue touch paper and suddenly be much faster than you expected them to be over the next few corners. So it's another thing you have to watch out for. When you very first come to Le Mans, you get told that it's really important when you're passing a car like this prototype I'm passing to the left to check your mirror before you go back across and take the natural line, because stuff surprises you with the speed that it's going or how late it can brake, which then means you end up with these really nasty high-speed crashes in a straight line. So I always check that mirror before I pull back across on stuff. So you watch drivers blip the throttle on every single down change in a historic car, and you think, is that really necessary? Well, watch my feet here and watch the response of the car. I effectively just missed the throttle pedal there. I'm too busy watching the traffic. I've gotten a little bit deep and forget to put a nice technique into the car, and the outcome is probably the closest to a crash, way closer to a crash actually than the onboard gives it credit for there. So yeah, it's what happens if you don't do that downshift technique right. Super necessary driving these kind of cars. See, from the way I drove that last sector, I'm actually a little bit pissed off with how this race is going. So there were way too many unnecessary little stabs of brake pedal to make the car change direction rather than letting it. And then the big throttle slide over the left rear out of the last corner was also totally unnecessary, as is this one out of the first sector. So all of that's going to hurt the rear tyre and actually make me slower over the course of this stint. This is me driving angry because I've effectively been screwed by the safety car and dragging its butt through the first and final sector as a result. Anyway, I realise I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to give you a couple of laps to enjoy it now at full volume. moving into the last section of the race. So let me take you through how I adapted my driving, because these were the first real set of laps that I'd actually had beyond qualifying, like the first sequence of laps that I'd really been able to push. So I made a few changes to how I went about it. So for this first sequence of corners, I took downshift slightly later and charged more speed into the first right, and that was just free speed I thought I could take. Then I got more greedy on that first curb, which allowed me to square off that second apex more and really help the traction over the hill to Dunlop, where I was more or less the same throughout the whole race, but I gave up a bit more in this first left so I could be more aggressive over the right and still stay within track limits as the rear moved around over the top. So I found an interesting interplay between the braking zones, where if I did more lift coast in the first two chicanes, I could then brake later without rear locking in Mulsanne because I overheated the brakes less. So these lift coast moments got longer as the race went on. If I brake what felt like too early for Mulsanne corner, I got a much better exit with less oversteer. So I just started bringing the braking back and back and back for that.
end of a pretty disastrous Le Mans Classic Race 1. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you like and subscribe for Race 2. Thanks for watching.